Thanks for listening to The Handbook, the Agency Operations Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Scoro. Scoro is a PSA or professional services automation platform. Don't blame me, I did not come up with that label. But yeah, it's easy for those of us in agencies to forget that ultimately we are professional services businesses in the business of selling time. A PSA platform helps your agency take a leap in maturity from disjointed tools and spreadsheets that don't talk to one another to a single source of truth for your business, bringing together your quoting, project and time tracking, invoicing, and reporting into one beautiful place. So you don't have to spend your time looking up or copying and pasting data from several different places. I left my job as an in-house ops director to work for Scoro because I was so impressed. Sign up for a free trial at Scoro.com, or if you arrange a demo call, tell them Harv sent you. Now, let's get to the episode. I'm Harv Nagra. I'm an operations consultant, a former in-house agency operations director, and head of brand communications at Scoro. Welcome to The Handbook, the Agency Operations Podcast, a space where we talk to fellow experts and operations leaders about agency life, discussing the challenges keeping us up at night, as well as strategies that help make things run a little bit smoother. Hey y'all, welcome back to the podcast. So a confession to start. I have a bad habit of letting work, and particularly my sense of achievement and productivity, influence how I feel about myself at the end of each day. I mean, I probably got into ops because I'm obsessed with getting things done and wanting things to be efficient, but that can have a negative influence on my mental health. If I didn't get everything done that I wanted to, even if those expectations were unreasonable, the lingering guilt and anxiety can ruin my evening. Actually, that story reminds me a bit of a TV series some of you may have seen called Severance. When the employees in this series step into their office, they can't remember anything about their personal lives. And when they leave work, they can't remember anything about their work lives. For better or worse, that's just not how real life works. We don't get a clean divide between who we are at work and who we are at home. What's happening in our personal lives, in our relationships, how well we slept, and our health, all of that can influence how we get on with work on a given day. And like my story above, what happens at work can easily influence how we feel and behave at home. So what we're going to be talking about today is emotional regulation, the psychology of work, why we act the way we do, and how we as agency leaders can work towards creating a culture that gets the best out of people by looking after their well-being. We'll also be sharing some tips and tricks on how you can plan your day in a way that energizes you rather than drains you. Our guest today is Amy Hopper. She's a former agency owner and now founder of business consultancy, the TOA Group. Amy is a sociologist and entrepreneur. She founded her first business at 25. She's overcome what you might call extreme personal challenges. I'm going to let her tell you her story in her own words in a few minutes. But through everything she's been through, Amy's created a system that helps individuals and teams overcome their challenges and become more focused, time efficient, engaged, and productive. That sounds like something we could all learn and benefit from, doesn't it? So let's get into the conversation. Amy, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
It is a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
There's so much you've done, so much you've accomplished, and so much you've overcome. Can you tell us your story?
Oh gosh, quickly?
Take as much time as you need.
I've actually written some of it down because I feel like if I don't, then
you'll miss details.
I'll miss details. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's been a colourful decade for sure. But essentially, went to uni, studied sociology, did my final thesis in the sociology of work and alienation in the workplace. Then went straight into work and realised that it was not for me. The 9 to 5 classic structure and hierarchical system. I just thought, yeah, that's not. I want to do my own thing. So started my own agency at 25. It was a PPC search agency in the glory days, as we like to call it. You know, when you used to have to write your own code in Excel.
Right.
Yeah, how beautiful was that? And sadly, a year later, I was involved in a dangerous car accident. A woman came into our lane, hit me head on, ended up with permanent spine damage. And
oh no.
Yeah, having a year-old business, what on earth am I going to do? And running the business pretty much like lying on my back. on the sofa. And I think one
Wow.
year, I think eight spinal procedures just in the course of the year, but managed to grow that business to a top 30 Google partner agency. We won drum awards, we won Amazon Business Award, and the business was doing really beautifully, really, really
Mm.
beautifully. But got to a stage in, I was still undergoing so many procedures, sometimes having to use a wheelchair, and it got to the point where the doctor said, yeah, you're going to need a fusion. So I had
Okay.
a titanium fusion at 31
Wow.
in the December. In the January, we went into lockdown,
Mm.
and then very, very sadly, in the first lockdown, I was widowed. I lost my husband and my business partner, and
Oh
just
my gosh.
just being in this position of just, I was still using a wheelchair, wasn't
Mm.
able to. I'd lost my body, lost my best friend, my husband,
Mm.
and now thinking about running a business, running an agency, which was doing really well when we
Mhm.
went, and thinking, what on earth am I going to do?
Right.
And there's quite a beauty actually in being in that position of surrender, full surrender, and your only way is up, because
Mhm.
you're on the floor, and because it teaches you the beauty of what's important
Right.
and what truly matters and what true value is.
Mhm.
So sold my business, sold my agency,
Okay. Yeah.
rebuilt my body, went traveling around Europe solo, went solo hiking 600 kilometers around Europe,
Wow.
and got to the position, obviously invested a huge amount in therapy, self-care,
Mm.
studying psychology, and training, and building my body and my mind back up to a
Mhm.
place where I was healthy. And then people started to say to me, yeah, how did you do it?
Mm.
How are you here? Not
Mhm.
only are you, but also smiling and
Yeah.
and able to function and thrive. And there was that British thing of instantly saying, "Oh, well, you just
Mhm.
put one foot in front of the other,"
Mhm.
and realizing in myself that that wasn't true at all. That I'd actually gone back to my training as a sociologist, and I'd gone back to my psychology, and I had read every single self-help guide in the library, and I'd done the yoga ashrams, and I'd taken the supplements, and I'd
Right.
gone from everything from sort of intensive trauma EMDR therapy all the way through to sort of mind body yoga experience and everything in between, plus business
Mhm.
coaching, plus a bit of military training, and realized I created a system of
Wow.
not only what worked for me, but what worked within business and what worked within organizations and worked for individuals and teams. And that's the system that Tower is based on today. And I thought, this isn't just for me. I need to show other people this. They don't have to go through what I went through in
Yeah.
order to achieve the same wisdom and the same results.
That is incredible.
Thank you. That covers that covers.
Wow, that is intense.
Yeah,
So,
it's intense. Yeah,
well done,
thank
and
you.
that's just super inspirational. And also that epiphany as well, that's not easy to come by or to say other people could learn from this or
Mm.
benefit from some of the things that you've learned. So that's amazing. So that's where you started TOA, and that was a
Mm.
couple of years ago?
Yeah, so TOL. Some people call it TOA. I don't mind. I
Okay.
think there's however
Okay.
however people want to pronounce it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that started in January 2023.
Mm,
So
okay.
we started off as well, although I hate the word well-being, that's another
Mm,
story. But I started off as a well-being consultancy for corporates, for agencies, and
mhm.
for businesses in high stress environments, and
Yeah.
it's turned into a performance consultancy.
Okay.
That's
I
very
like
much
that.
the way that the direction the clients wanted to take it in, and so that's what we did to facilitate the need.
Right. So I think I know what a sociologist does, but the sociology of work, I mentioned this in the intro about yourself. What does that mean? What
So
is the sociology of work?
essentially in sociology, what you're studying is you're studying relationships and structures.
Okay.
And sociology in itself is actually a subject that it's a rich tapestry with threads from many different subjects. So you've got
Hmm.
history in there, cultural studies, you've got neuroscience, psychology, philosophy, anthropology, and everything in between. But essentially, how sociology works, you are studying everything from the micro level in terms
Hmm.
of this is an individual and why is an individual making these decisions as part of their personal makeup within society, all the
Right.
way up to the macro of what are sociological structures and cultures and what are the behaviors that govern why certain groups do things,
Okay.
both in the present and historically.
Right.
So, in terms of a company and in terms of a business, it's really, really important actually to look at it sociologically and
Hmm.
psychologically, rather than simply applying like traditional business coaching or just economics, because people aren't numbers, people aren't,
Hmm.
and there'll be a whole host of reasons both within the business and outside of the business why your team and your individuals within your team act the certain way that they do,
Hmm.
and how we can help them to support them to make sure that they are thriving within all environments.
Right.
Mm.
Okay. So you do some of your own research. Is that kind of the sociologist background, and is that separate to your work, or has that kind of become all part of TOA now as well?
It's all part of TOA now. I started it just as a bit of fun
Okay.
because I have apparently a strange definition of what I consider fun. Let's do a sociological study. Why not?
That's
But
amazing.
the reason I started it is because we didn't just want to go down the route of, oh well, we're qualified, or this person's got an MBA, or this director's got an MBA, I've got a sociology degree, blah 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 blah. We know what we're doing.
Mm,
It's about, no, we are here as a service. It's
mm.
our job to service our customers. So let's find out what's happening with our customers.
Yeah.
So, for example, in the last bit of research, we took a number of, 40 software houses and agencies within Europe. So it was within the UK, Romania, Hungary, and Poland. And we really got to the nitty gritty through it was interview, face-to-face interview with directors and owners of those businesses. What was actually happening within the agency, within the software house? Where are the sticking points? What is the world of work after COVID like? What are the communication challenges that are coming up? How is hybrid work versus remote work? And just a very, very well, what turned into essentially a chat turned into a much larger research study where some very key themes came throughout, no matter what the country, no matter what the size of the business. And that's when we started doing more and more of the research, because it allows us to see the challenges that our clients are actually having,
Right.
allows us to keep our ear to the ground, and therefore the workshops that we produce and the content that we produce is actually solving those challenges, rather than just us doing things on a whim and thinking, oh, it might get picked up.
Mhm. Much more grounded in what people are talking about or experiencing. There was a couple of kind of studies that you had mentioned. There was this, you'd mentioned something to me about the happiness
Ah,
index,
yeah.
first of all, and there was something else about that, something about the team is dead. So maybe you could tell us a bit about those.
I've got to be careful about what I quote to you in other chats. Yeah. Okay. So Happiness Index. So the lovely Matt, co-founder of Happiness Index, and we started chatting just because, of course, we work in similar spaces, and got on so well. Got on like a house
Mhm.
on fire. And then in one of our chats, we discussed everything from neuroscience all the way through to, I don't know, what plants we're planting in the garden. But a
Okay.
subject that came up was this idea of jealousy and envy
Hmm.
within the workplace. And the Happiness Index is a great company. They do a lot of research into what's happening in teams and making sure that you can create a happier workplace, because happy people create better work. And we realized that actually no one talks about jealousy. No one talks
No.
about envy within the
Hmm.
workplace. And of course, a lot of people think that they're intertwined and that they're the same thing when they're actually quite separate. And that when you think about the idea of toxic workplace culture
Right.
and cliques and
Mhm.
alienation within the workplace, that actually it's grounded in jealousy, and it's grounded in these emotions which which are perceived as negative, and people hide because they're ashamed of them.
Right.
And so we ended up doing a couple of little surveys on LinkedIn, and a bit of research into, one, has anyone experienced someone being jealous towards them and therefore being alienated in the workplace?
Right.
And two, was anyone going to admit that they've been jealous of someone else and how it impacted?
Okay.
And it was very, very interesting, the results that
Mm.
came through. It was, obviously, you can imagine most people have experienced it at some point in their career, yet it's
Mhm.
just not talked about. So we did a webinar about it and got lots of people involved, because I think it's something that really needs a lot more focus,
Mm.
and also not as much shame around it, for people to just hold their hands up and gone, yep, I've done that, but let's work about how we can correct it and make sure it doesn't have a negative impact in the workplace.
Right. We do kind of try to deny those negative emotions, don't we? Like
Mm,
try to distance ourselves from them. And you're right, there is shame there when you think about those kinds of
for
things.
sure. And you've actually said a really good point there. You said the word negative emotion.
Mm.
I mean, a
Mm.
big thing that we try and do in Tower is teach people that there is no such thing as a negative emotion, that there is only emotion,
Good point.
and the how one reacts to it, the reaction is
Yeah.
negative and or positive. So in
Understood.
terms of, as if you're envious of someone,
Mhm.
that actually envy is one of those emotions that on the surface someone may say, oh, that's a negative emotion, but actually it's your driver and your
Mhm.
direction. It could be, oh, I'm envious of this person, they can speak Spanish.
Yeah.
I Therefore it could be your driver to learn how to speak Spanish and take Spanish lessons.
Right.
So it's quite a nice, if you can feel it and you can
Mm.
recognize it and you can practice self-awareness, it actually is a really good, key way of trying to find your direction.
I really like that. And you're completely right. I would always frame that in a negative context if you hadn't pointed that out. And what is the team is dead? What was that idea about?
No, that's just me saying something clickbaity.
Okay. Was
That's
I
one of
not
my
supposed to mention that
clickbaity
one?
bits.
Okay.
The reason I say the team is dead, and I was talking to a dear friend of mine who's one of the business directors that advises Tower, and we just agreed that, particularly in the light of COVID, people have come back to work and there's a huge lack of collective well-being.
Mhm.
But also there is so much movement in the workplace. I mean, when we talk about agencies and ops, digital is a very fast moving industry. It always has been. So much change all the time. You often go to sleep an expert and wake up a novice,
Mhm.
which creates such, I want to say, sometimes confusion and confliction within the person. And you're
Mhm.
constantly in that battle of imposter syndrome of, who am I and am I good at this? And because one day you might be great, one day you might not, because they've changed it.
Mhm.
And the reason I say the team is dead is because, as there is so much movement, as there is so much change, as teams are merging, acquisitions, changing structures, if you go in and you treat the team in its current space,
Yeah.
I think we're going to do workshops and we're going to do structures and we're going to change culture just within this team.
Mhm.
Next week it could change. And someone goes out, someone comes in, there's a different hire, there's a different structure, like there's a new project.
Right.
So if you're treating it as a team, it might not work, because that you're giving someone a structure and that structure is going to change.
Yeah.
So we have a phrase, we say, we teach individuals how to work with individuals.
Mhm.
And so when you bring it down to the individual level of teaching someone personal resilience and emotional regulation
Mhm.
and empathy for oneself and one's colleagues,
Mm.
just as the basis,
Yeah.
that person can go and work in any team, any structure, any management level, and having those as their base skills will thrive.
Mm.
And that's why we say the team is dead. Because as well, we've got people that are working from home,
Mhm.
remotely, hybrid, in different countries, different cultures. To treat someone just as a team group, it just doesn't seem to work. But
Mm.
yeah, the phrase itself, obviously the team's not dead. You've got to work in the team. It's just clickbaity nonsense.
I got you. Okay. No, I see where you're going with that. That is super interesting. And
Mm.
I imagine you work with teams of a variety of sizes as well. Is there any other kind of things that you see, problems that bigger teams might have versus smaller teams? Do you see any patterns like that?
I think the common threads that come up are when you see teams that are going through a growth.
Yeah.
The common thread that comes up is there's be someone somewhere that doesn't want to let go of the reins.
Mm,
And it could be a founder, it could be a director, but as a team grows, perfectionism is normally rife. And this idea of I can't let go of this. The short-term discomfort of having to train someone and allowing that person to make mistakes for the long-term gain of growth.
I've been there.
Yeah, we've all been there. I've made that
Yeah.
mistake so many times. So that's one that needs a lot of coaching. And as a company gets really big,
Hmm.
so we've done some projects with the likes of like Virgin O2.
Hmm.
There is always a sense of the people at the top don't know who I am
Right.
and they don't see me. And whereas in the smaller agencies and smaller businesses, there is a beauty of everyone knows each other, and therefore you're much able to just have a sense of who that person is, what they're about, rather than just a number, which
Right.
comes with its own problems, own set of challenges. But yeah,
Hmm.
in the larger businesses, it's harder to implement change
Mm,
successfully because there is a distinct lack of connection
mhm.
between the people that are trying to implement that change and also the ones creating the change or writing what the change is going to be and the
Yeah.
people that it's actually going to affect.
Mm,
And that's probably the biggest challenge that we see. There's the Mora's three principles of resistance, and that's normally the reason why change isn't implemented successfully within businesses and people don't follow it. And it's
mhm.
essentially, I don't like it, like, I don't understand it, and I don't like you. And
Right?
even if the change is great and it's brilliant and it's
Yeah.
been understood, there's an emotional level there. And a
Mhm.
person saying, you don't know me, you don't know how this impacts my job, so I'm not going
Yeah.
to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
That totally makes sense.
For us, when we go into businesses and there will be a set of challenges that business is facing,
Mhm.
well, 9 times out of 10, there is a psychological or sociological reason as to why that is happening.
Yeah.
And if you can find that and you can work on that element, generally everything else falls into place.
Mhm.
And we work on the basis that happy, emotionally regulated individuals create better work. And once you realize that and you see that, and you see workplaces that actually have well-being at the forefront are 21% more productive as a whole. That was a
Mm.
study done by Deloitte in 2022. That if you can actually implement that change successfully, just through what may seem like a massive ask, but can just be some tweaks and changes to structure and psychology and culture,
Right.
that what you're trying to do as a sort of the superficial overarching goal of your company is much, much easier to achieve because you've got the people on board to do it and
Mhm.
everyone's heading in the right direction.
And I think as your organization grows and evolves from a management or an operations director point of view, you're very close to what's happening. So it's easy to sometimes lose sight of the big picture,
Mm.
perhaps.
Absolutely. And we've all suffered from the curse of knowledge in which you're just too close to something or
Mm.
it's your baby and
Mhm.
you can't see the wood through the trees, and that's just human nature. That's not anything bad. And even when we go in and sometimes we have to say to directors, look, you're in the tell stage of management. If you're not being collaborative with your team, you're not being open enough, you're not being empathetic enough, there's no judgment there. there's
Yeah.
there's no you're doing this wrong, like.
Mm.
And I think that's sometimes the fear of businesses or people when they bring us in, that we're going to tell them off and expose their inadequacies, when
Mhm.
actually we're saying, look, you're just human. We're
Yeah.
all just human. We're here to just help support you and guide you for something that you might not even be able to see that's happening,
Right.
which is quite often the case. I mean, that's why we have unconscious bias training, right?
Mm.
It's the whole point of it. So I think it takes quite an open and self-aware director and manager to see that and put their hands up and go, you know what, I'm probably not the best person to do this. I know we've got some
Mhm.
challenges. Let's sort them out.
Yeah, it's almost like that is it the frog in the boiling pot of water kind of thing? Sometimes you just can't
Yeah.
see what's happening. So I think, whether it's with external help or not, just having the awareness that as you're growing, you do need to take these moments of kind of reflection
Mm.
to see what was working for you at a certain size or a certain stage versus what would be better now. And if you're not taking those opportunities, then you're kind of very reactive. I think that's where a lot of us end up, unfortunately, is that we don't take those opportunities to optimize, and then we end up having to react to the problems after they're already taking place rather than being proactive with the solution.
I think that's an excellent point. That's a really excellent point. We use an analogy about what we do, but also not just what we do, but also things like therapy and engaging in well-being in the first place. Is that although we've made huge strides in things like mental health and well-being and self-care, and people are jumping more onto the side of knowing how important it is, in that you can't use a phone when the battery's not charged.
Yeah.
There's still this idea, and definitely when I've been doing my research, there's still this idea, quite common, that therapy and services like what we do, what TOA provide, are a fire extinguisher to use when the fire is already raging,
Hmm.
rather than a preventative service to make sure the fire doesn't start in the first place.
Right.
And that's the key. I think so. It's exactly what you said. The frog in the pot analogy.
Hmm.
Exactly. The water's just getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and suddenly you realise that you're boiling.
Yeah.
But actually, just having that service there in the first place and using it, you won't be putting out fires. You'll just be making sure that they don't start.
There was another thing on your website that I saw that TOA can result in a decrease in presenteeism. What
Mm.
does that mean?
Presenteeism.
Hmm.
A lot of people ask me this, and actually,
Okay.
presenteeism,
Hmm.
it costs the UK economy twice as much as absenteeism.
Oh, wow.
Presenteeism is where, and we've all done it, where you almost feel the need to have to go into work even though
Hmm.
you shouldn't be.
Right.
And it could be because you are poorly, it could be because you are having a very bad mental health day, it could be for a whole host of reasons. You
Hmm.
shouldn't be going into work, but you do.
Right.
And in those situations, individuals feeling that pressure that aren't then going to be doing their best quality work,
Hmm.
because they could be incredibly poorly, they could be in pain, they could be not mentally able or have the capacity to work that day.
Hmm.
And so the quality of work will not only be likely poor, or it will have to be redone, or it have to be checked over, or you could end up in a really bad situation where the work done then loses a client or loses money, or the person coming in that's poorly then makes everyone else poorly because they're spreading a cold around.
Yeah.
And so actually in those times, saying to someone, no, stay at home, or
Hmm.
having a culture that facilitates self-care is really, really important, because it's costing your business money, and
Understood.
it's reflecting on the bottom line.
Yeah. Right.
It's sort of like you could have a person, imagine you've got 2 hours, and you can either have an hour to yourself, recharge your battery, and then work at 100% capacity for an hour,
Hmm.
or you can work at 50% capacity for 2 hours.
Right.
Same work gets done.
Yeah.
I know
Amazing.
that's a bit of a sweeping statement and a bit facetious, but the point still remains.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, Amy, in your system, one aspect is productivity. And I wanted to give our listeners some practical tips that they could take away today and implement for themselves as ops people. I sometimes felt as an ops director, just like firefighting constantly with
Mm,
people's issues. And on the one hand, it's like, okay, well, I'm helping unlock people from their issues and allowing them to do their work. But then it also meant I'm not getting things I need to get
Yeah,
done as efficiently. And also for their teams, there's a lot of distractions these days. And I'm going to be presenting a webinar as well on some of these distractions and how those could be overcome. But I was keen to hear some of your advice on what you advise on how people can bring a bit more focus to their work and to their teams as well.
for
Could
sure.
you share some advice?
Oh, do you want some of
The hot
the
tips.
hot tips? Okay, let's think. I'd start. I mean, this isn't a TOA. This is something that we teach, but it's not ours. I'm sure people are very aware of setting SMART goals. So let's take the example we said about the person that was envious of the person that spoke Spanish.
Yeah.
And so someone might set the goal of, oh, I want to speak Spanish. You're
Hmm.
very, very unlikely to achieve that goal because it's not time sensitive. It's
Yeah.
not measurable. It's kind of a, oh, I want to learn Spanish.
Right.
So if you're going to make that goal smart, we
Hmm.
have to set a time. You have to make it very specific,
Hmm.
and you have to be in a space where let's take for example, I want to learn basic conversational Spanish in order to have a conversation with someone within the next 6 months.
Yeah.
That's a SMART goal because
Right.
you are able to achieve it. It's not out of the ordinary for you to be able to achieve that. You haven't said it's so high that you're not going to do it, but
Yeah.
also you're able to measure whether you've done it or not, and
Right.
therefore congratulate yourself
Yeah.
on whether you've done it or not, and make yourself feel good and get that dopamine hit from completing something.
Good point.
So I'd say that's the first thing, always making your goals smart rather than rather than a random
Too
goal that
broad.
you can't then achieve, and then you have to go to an ops director to help you with it.
Okay. Good.
The lift list is really important. The TOA
What's
lift
that?
list. So you get two pieces of paper or a notebook, and on one side you write what drains you, on the other side you write what lifts you.
Okay.
And this is things, and essentially it's what makes you happy, what makes you sad, but it's much more about when we do it, we talk about, okay, how does that make you feel within your body when something truly lifts you? And
Mm.
it's almost, think of it like a bank account, like what's paying into that bank account and what's
Hmm.
spending. So people on their lift list have written things like cooking, yoga, spending time with my family, spending time with a pet, gardening, etc., etc. On the
Hmm.
drain list, there might be, let's think about the emails that should have been like a text message, or
Hmm.
a meeting that should have been an email. Yeah, having meetings that you shouldn't have been in because like you sat there for an hour and you didn't contribute anything,
Yeah.
etc., etc. You write down these things. Then when you come to your diary and actually putting those clients in, those tasks in, we have what we call the TOA traffic light system. And so when you have a client that is going to drain you,
Yeah.
and you know they're going to, and you know the ones,
Hmm. Absolutely.
you put them in red.
Okay.
And when you have a client that's going to lift you,
Okay.
or a situation that's going to lift you, like I love pitching. So if I put
Yeah.
pitch in, that pitch is going to be green.
Okay.
And then your amber is, oh, I don't really know. It could go either way.
Okay.
And when you then look at that traffic light system, you're able to emotionally regulate yourself and say, okay, well, I've got a load of red on here. I need to sandwich this between green. So then you go to your lift list, you see what makes you happy, and you make sure that if you've got a load of red, that you've got at least a big chunk of green before and after, so that your day doesn't start and you're just going down downhill.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
you're keeping yourself emotionally regulated. And that for me on my traffic light system, I don't have any red after 2.
Okay.
I have that sort of afternoon slump, and
Yeah.
unless it's an emergency. Oh, unless it's an emergency
Yeah.
and something's come in, you just can't help it. But then I would make
Okay.
sure that I've got some green afterwards.
I like that.
It's
That's okay.
I don't know where my Alexa keeps going. Stupid thing. Oh wait, I mean, sorry, lovely thing. I don't like my Alexa stupid just for when the robots take over. They'll remember that I was polite.
Mm.
But yeah, so going back to the point, when you're talking about emotional regulation and making sure that your battery stays a little bit more full throughout the day,
Mm,
it's about making sure you haven't got a load of red, you sandwich
yeah.
it between the green, and that you're really truly understanding what makes you happy. Because some people don't know. And
Mm,
sometimes you are so, what's the word? Sometimes we can be so paralyzed through choice,
yeah.
particularly if we're having a busy day. And if it's a
Yeah.
busy ops day, you've just got so much stuff going on. Even if you had 10 minutes to spare,
Mhm.
the mental labor required to choose something to lift you or think of what
Yeah.
to do, you actually sometimes don't have the mental capacity to do that. So that's why
Mhm.
it's good to have the lift list and go, oh, okay, I've got 10 minutes. I can do that. I fancy going for a walk. I'll just go for
Yeah.
a walk. And the decision's kind of made for you. You've already
Yeah. Yeah.
pre-created the list.
Mhm.
It's also really good for managers to understand that every single person's lift list is different.
Mhm.
So it's no good in terms of well-being, and you might have the best of intention in saying, "Oh, well, we're going to bring a yoga instructor in, and we're going to do yoga on the rooftop, and everyone's going to feel
Mhm.
great." The amount of drain lists I've seen with yoga at the top,
Mhm.
so you can't have a one size fits all.
Right.
And this is another reason why we say the team is dead, because we get everyone to do their individual lift list and drain list in their first workshop, no matter what they're doing with us, they always
Mhm.
do that first workshop first thing,
Right.
because we want individuals to be able to know themselves and to practice that self-awareness, practice that emotional regulation, so they're able to communicate better and set better boundaries and
Right.
interact with well-being activities that will lift them, not drain them.
Yeah.
Mm.
Amazing. I like there's multiple layers to this. First, there's that non-work stuff there as well that's on the lift list,
Mm.
right? And that could be good or bad. And then you can also put tasks there as well that make you feel good or not so good. And then from what I understood is that you put people there as well. So
Yeah,
whether they're clients.
that's another workshop, but we have that's another reason why sociology comes into this
Yeah.
as well. Because I
Okay.
say when I do work, particularly with C-suite, and
Mhm.
they might have a huge amount of pressure on their shoulders. And they
Mhm.
might be they might be going through VC funding, they might be starting a new business, they might be merging with another or acquiring, or there is a huge amount of pressure. And
Mhm.
you could have the best business plan that's ever been written in the history of man. But if you're
Mhm.
spending your time exclusively with people that make you feel 3 out of 10, that don't
Mm.
believe in you, that don't
Yeah.
say, yeah, you can do it, that are constantly criticizing you or your abilities, there is
Yeah.
no way in hell you're going to be able to implement that business plan successfully. It's almost pointless.
Mhm.
So that's why we think about, when you think about sociology, you think about the behaviors of your social groups and the wider social culture. You need to be thinking how that has an influence on you as an individual and on your business,
Mm.
because it has a massive, massive impact, huge
Mhm.
impact, and the impact on your team.
Mm. Super, super good advice. So, can you tell us a bit about the kind of work that you end up doing with some of your agency customers?
Yeah, for sure. So we tend to have three types of client
Okay.
that come to us.
Mhm.
And there is the first type of client, and they will have a very specific goal.
Mhm.
So, for example, a couple of months ago, Adobe came to us and said, we've got this women's leadership program. We
Yeah.
want you to create a system of workshops on confidence and imposter syndrome to add to that leadership program to be delivered over the next year. Like, really
Okay.
very specific, clear
Yeah.
goal. We know what we want. This is it. And we go, absolutely no problem. Let's go.
Okay.
Then there'll be the second type of client, and that's probably normally our main type of client, where they're coming to us
Mhm.
and saying, "We know we're having challenges. Our
Mm.
team have expressed this.
Mhm.
We think that this may be it, but we don't really know. But it's causing a lot of issues." And
Okay.
that's when we'll go in and we'll do a discovery phase, and
Mm.
it could be that we do surveys, one-to-one interviews, actually looking at the nitty-gritty of what's going on,
Okay.
finding out what those key pinpoints are,
Mm.
going back to the client and saying, okay, this is what we found out from your team, which is all of course anonymous, and gives them a much better idea of what's actually going on, which they
Mhm.
might not have known before. Then we create a system of workshops, training, coaching, maybe one-to-one mentoring,
Okay.
consultancy, and structural cultural change to help get them on their way. And then there is the third client that come to us and they say, we need a keynote to kick everyone up the arse.
Mm. Okay. Yeah.
And we go, you come to the right place.
Mhm. Okay.
And that's normally for people who are having large conferences, or
Yeah.
they're having big sort of team corporate days with hundreds of people. And
Right.
we'll go and do either a keynote or a mini workshop.
Okay.
And that would be just bam, bam, bam. Here are some things that you can take away and implement from day one.
Amazing. Very cool. Very cool. So we're coming towards the end of
No.
our session. And I guess before we go, just a moment to ask you if there's any other advice you would give to an ops director or growing agency. I'm putting you on the spot. And if there's nothing you want to say, I will cut out this question. But just any other advice. We talked about productivity and the lift list, the traffic light system, and things like that.
Mm.
Is there anything else you would say, whether it's about collaboration or anything else you do?
I'd say don't wait until the fire has started.
Mm,
Stop the fire from happening. And in terms of wanting to be better, not only as an individual, but grow as an individual, and not just be calmer and more self-aware in yourself, but also a better team member, a more empathetic leader,
mhm,
a person that is able to take life and work challenges
mhm,
and really remain resilient.
mhm,
That investing in well-being and therapy is a huge part of that, and certainly has been a huge part of me in my personal growth.
mhm. That is such an amazing, lovely note to end on. I really, really like that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, if people want to learn more about you and TOA, where do they find more information?
Oh, well, we can go to the website toagroup.co.uk, or
Okay.
please do connect with me on LinkedIn. I absolutely adore talking to people on LinkedIn, and the messages that we receive, both from happy clients and people wanting to learn more. So that would be fantastic.
Excellent. We'll do that. Amy, thank you so much for being here today.
It's been a pleasure.
So, what did you think? I find Amy's story incredibly inspiring, and a lot of what she says resonates. As ops folks, we can get very into tracking the metrics and designing the processes, but I do think it's important for us to remember that humans aren't machines, and not only can we not treat each other as if we are, but we can have more fun, be more productive, and get more out of each other if we create workplaces where we address the less tangible elements like mental health and psychology. And personally, I realized I could definitely benefit from creating a lift list, which was creating a list of things I enjoy doing or enjoy working on, and then scheduling my day ahead with the traffic light system in mind, which meant sandwiching those difficult people, conversations, or tasks between things that make me feel happy and energized. I hope you'll be able to go away and reflect on some of this as well and see how it applies to your workplace and take some small steps to make a positive change. Now, before I go, I only have one request for you. Please share this podcast with a friend or colleague in the agency space that would appreciate it. I'm going to leave it there. That's your cue. Share the episode. Thanks very much. This podcast is brought to you by Scoro, a platform designed for agencies and consultancies, which allows you to manage your projects, finances, and resources, all from one system. This is a platform I brought in at a previous workplace, which completely transformed the way we worked, and which I've recommended to clients of my own. You can sign up for a free trial on Scoro.com. That's SCORO.com. Or reach out to me, Harv Nagra, on LinkedIn if you'd like to hear about some of my experiences.